Okay, good afternoon. It's Tuesday afternoon. I'm sure some people will join me. I know that I've gotten some good feedback from people who can't make it at this time frame, and as we record these sessions, they've been able to go back and review these and pick up on the thread of what we're talking about today. As I mentioned, we don't happen to have anybody in the room with us, and that's okay. I'm a stickler for starting on time, and so I'm going to go ahead and start. If they join us later, that's fine. If they don't, then hopefully they'll come back and pick up on this. But anyway, today's session, we are going to discuss trend identification found on page 80 of the book. And we're going to go all the way through to, let's see, page 90, I believe. Yeah, 91, where we'll take it all the way through some of the other kinds of tools that we can use to increase our returns in a risk-adjusted world. Here's Jody. Jody, how are you? Hello, Jody. Can you hear me yet?
I can. There you are. Now I see you.
There she is. Hi. So
how are you doing?
Good. I went ahead and got started, but we will stop and circle back in a minute with what we were going to talk about. But how are you doing?
Okay.
Okay. Well, good.
How are you?
I'm doing good. It looks like it's just you and I so far, and that's okay. We'll just kind of co-pilot this presentation, and we can just talk about it and go through it together. Have you, by chance, had an opportunity to look over pages 80 to 91 in the book, talking about trend identification and real estate fundamentals and some of these other things?
I know I have briefly, but it's been a minute since I have.
No problem. I'll just present some ideas, and then you can just kind of jump in whenever you want and just clarify or ask questions or that kind of thing. In fact, I really appreciate the fact that you do like to ask questions, because it allows us to kind of circle back and cover things that we might not otherwise cover. And so you're very
I'm glad
much
it's not annoying.
Oh no, not at all. Not at all. The only time questions get annoying for me is when people repeat the same question over and over and over again by the time they should have maybe started to get something.
Right.
But I'm usually pretty patient even with that. So
before you get started, Mark, real quick, how's the weather there? Have you guys been having tornadoes?
No tornadoes in the last couple of weeks that I know of. It's been kind of rainy. It's cloudy right now, so it looks like it could rain. And the rains have been kind of warm. The temperatures have been all right.
Well, that's good.
We had a real heat wave. I think it was last week or the week before last, I guess it was. We actually got up into the 90s, which is more typical for July, August.
Right.
But May, this soon in the season into the spring, is not typically 90-degree weather. It's often high 70s, maybe low 80s.
I know, it's been crazy.
Yeah.
We had snow here.
You have snow right now?
We did day before yesterday. Wait.
Oh my goodness.
Today? It was Friday into Saturday.
It's funny. We had some late season snow, but that was a month ago.
Right.
We did. I think we had snow in April. But yeah, we're out of that range of temperature. Although, this week it's been as low as in the low 50s in the morning. So it's been
a
nice
strange,
and cool.
Yeah. I'm ready for the heat. I don't mind it. So Anyway, I just
I
thought
like
there
it
might have
to be
been
just-
tornadoes going on in your neck of the woods.
No, like I said, I think we had one about 3 weeks ago come through, or at least I don't know that it touched down, but our sirens went off.
Okay,
We have tornado watch sirens, and so when there's a sighting that could possibly, come through the vicinity, the sirens go off, and we're all supposed to go down to our basements and take cover.
right.
But we haven't had
Okay.
anything like that happen in 3 or 4 weeks, I think it was. We had one Sunday evening where they had the sirens going off for a while. Instead of taking cover, I go outside and look for it. It's like, can I see something coming here? If I don't
Yeah,
see
they're
it coming, it's like, we're not going to the basement.
Right.
Anyway, it's pretty funny.
I'm trying to find the book. I have it saved, and I'm always trying to find it.
What book is that?
Ben's book, the
Oh, yeah, I've downloaded it and I have it, yeah. So,
there it is. Wait. Is it it's not the capital creation guide.
no, it's the shadow banking book. It's this book right here. If you can,
I'm always,
taking
where
it
did
away.
I save it?
Anyway, it's this book.
There it is. I saved like some things on my drive, my Google Drive, and then some things on my Microsoft Drive,
Mhm.
just to confuse myself. I'm always trying to find stuff.
I ought to do that. I ought to separate things between my Microsoft Drive and the Google Drive.
Well, some things are just more convenient. You click a button and it'll download into your Google Drive.
Mm-hmm.
But then some things are more, I don't know, too much. Okay, it's pulling up. My computer is slow.
Okay.
So we're on page 80.
Yep, we're on page 80.
And I will have to tell you, we will have to talk about Warren Claff.
Yes, I saw that. I'm definitely
Yeah.
excited to talk to you about that. I wanted to look at that tonight and tomorrow, and then talk to you offline there and
Yeah.
go over that in some detail. I did check out your website as well. It looks great.
Getting
Anthony,
there.
how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks.
Hi, Anthony.
Hello. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Just gonna have me a cigar on today's meeting, so I hope that's okay.
Not a
Oh,
problem.
man. I should have a glass of wine, but I can't. I'm gonna be driving my
It's funny.
Thunder.
I like the smell of cigar, tobacco. Like that. I love that. But
Yeah.
once you light up, I couldn't stand it.
Yeah.
I love the smell of cigars.
Yeah, I do too. If they're unlit. I mean, because the tobacco in them smells really good. It's very savory. But once you light them up, it's like whatever, something changes. So are those Cubans?
I'm not for sure what this one is, but AJ Fernandez, H. Upman. It's a pretty decent brand, I guess.
Okay. Well, you'll
I
have
am
to you'll
definite-
have to tell us how it tastes when you get it going there.
You got it.
So just to recap real quick, we're starting on page 80 in the book if you're wanting to follow along. And we'll go to about page 91, depending on how much time we have today. And again, I just want to mention that questions are great. Questions are what allow us to focus up on what everyone else is asking, because they're all asking the same question. If you have the question, I have the question probably, and so does just about everybody else. So feel free to jump in and ask the questions that are not clear, or we can talk about it again or try to explain it in different language or what have you. Just so you know, I am recording this, and Anthony, I believe I owe you a recording from last week as well. We'll get both of those put up there to have some record of this. Okay.
Yeah, I was having trouble with all the other recordings that I saw in the
Yeah,
group
there's
chat.
about 2 recordings that will stay up at any one point in time, and then after that they roll off because I think it's because I don't have enough space on my Zoom account to keep these huge files stored, and so I'm able to keep maybe 2 files at a time. So I'll put up the file link, and then it'll roll off after time, depending on how much space I've got.
Okay.
So yeah, and that's a good word for people, listening to this later on, is stay current with this because
They could disappear.
yeah, the archive meetings will roll off after time and they'll disappear. And it's interesting because I've copied those, I've downloaded those, and so I have a link connection, and I've tried to just upload the link or upload my file, I should say. Ben had suggested that, but there's a file size limitation on the community, so my files are too big to put up there. Maybe if I practice zipping them, maybe that would go up. I don't know. I'll have to play with it and try it.
Have you tried maybe putting it on a YouTube, I guess, is a private video with
Yeah, that's a good
color?
idea too, and I should probably do that. He was suggesting that I put up YouTube videos about other subjects as well, and that's a good point, Anthony. I probably should just do that. I would have a whole channel's worth of videos up there probably right away, and then we can just add more over time. So good idea. That's probably what I'll do, and then
Cool.
that way I can just put the link to the YouTube video there, and
Right.
that way it's evergreen, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into this. So on page 80, Ben introduces trend identification, and there's a few points about looking at trends I think that are really important because it goes to the secret sauce of how he is able to take the back-tested data and project into the future what's going to happen. And he does that through a concept called interpolation. Are you guys familiar with the concept of interpolation? Okay.
Oh.
We're going to talk about that just a little bit. Okay. I'm very well familiar with the concept. I remember struggling with it back in Algebra 2 trig days, or maybe it was calculus. I don't remember. I think it was Algebra 2. Looking at these formulas, it was probably Algebra 2 trig. So I took that in my sophomore year of high school. and so even though I got the concept, the math probably will evade me. But let's take a look at this. That graph down there on the bottom of page 80, he brings out a couple of concepts. Number one, there's the linear line, and the linear line, as you can see there, is in red, and the red line represents a linear representation of the data that's there. And I probably should back up and talk about the data first. So this graph is called the median price of US houses. It looks like it's going from, and these things are so stinking small, I have to use a magnifying glass.
I know.
But it goes from
1963.
1963 all the way up to 2011 or 2009, actually, probably. Let's see, maybe 2007. Anyway, yeah, 2007, according to the line that he wrote underneath. So, in other words, the blue squiggly line there, the dark blue squiggly line is the median of the ranges, the price ranges, represented by those other blue lines. They look kind of like compressed candlesticks, if you will. If you're looking at a chart there, they look like not candlesticks, but they look like the lines that are representing a range of prices. And then, of course, the blue line is the median of all those ranges. So if that makes sense, just wave at me or something. And then with that, he uses interpolation to create the red line, which is linear, and the yellow line, which is exponential or parabolic, as he uses the term, or in some people call it a geometric line, but it's that exponential curve that, you know, does this or does this. I'm backwards. And so those interpolations are done by a couple of algebraic equations that you'll see about halfway down, or similar algebraic equations like the ones you see halfway down on page 81. And the red line represents the linear line. And so he gives you an equation that would look a lot like a linear line there. The y equals mx plus b would be definitely a linear line, just whatever you plug in for y and x. And then, of course, the yellow line is the exponential line, which would be the ax2 plus bx plus c equals y. So anytime you have that kind of an equation, you know you're dealing with an exponential curve if you're to plot it. Now, here's the difference between interpolation and what we normally do in terms of graphing these. Back in high school, you were given the equation and told to graph it, okay? Interpolation is just the opposite. You're given the data or the curve, and you're expected now to come up with the equation, okay? That's just the opposite. Does that make sense? And so that's why it takes a quantitative financial guru like Ben to be able to take that data and say, what's the equation? As opposed to just simply plotting out a trend. And so that's the main point that I think he's trying to make with respect to this trend identification. Anthony, did you have a question there that you wanted to ask real quick? I saw a hand go up or something. Are we just waving?
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt you, but
Oh,
I
okay.
was wondering if you could put the page that you're on screen. Could you share that with us?
I wish I could. I'm looking at a hardback book.
Oh, okay.
And I don't have the book itself downloaded yet. I need to probably do that.
It was in. I got it pulled up from the classroom.
Oh, you have it, Jody? I'll share it. Let you share the screen if you want to put it up there. Okay, it's your screen to share.
Uh-oh. Well, but I'm on my cell phone.
Oh,
Let's see if I can share it from my cell. I don't know if I can share it from my cell phone. Let's see. Hang on.
In times past, I've been able to pull out the master class and come to the page, but I'm wrestling with the audio on that most of the time, so I don't like bringing that up. But I could try to do that, I suppose. Let me see. Well, we'll race to see who gets a screen up first.
It'll probably be you. I don't know if it'll show you everything that I have. I'm closing down a bunch of stuff.
Okay, let me try that.
Let's see, OneDrive. Oh. Isn't it what I mean by that?
Formative risk-adjusted performance measures into a precise rating system.
You can see it, or here I have it.
Represent half over their traditional counterparts. Will have half over their tradition given a formula and add.
Okay, so I've got it here. I'll pull it up.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll be jumping off camera in my car toward the end. So I always do this on my cell.
Okay. Can you see that? Let's see if I can get that screen bigger. Go to full screen on this. There we go.
Yeah.
So Anthony, can you see that graph now for the median price of US houses?
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay, yeah. So basically, as we were, I'll just repeat real quick so everybody can see this. The dark blue squiggly line represents the median of each of the ranges. So it's easiest to see if you look at the last year's worth of data. Come up here to the top, you see what looks kind of like a candlestick. It's not really a candlestick, but it's kind of that graphical chart of a range. So in other words, the price is ranged from this low right here where my arrow's pointing all the way up to that high. And of course, the heavy blue line represents for each of those years now, all of the median prices. And that's why it's squiggly. It's going to be all over. But you can see how it is going up. And then of course, as we're looking at the red line, which is a linear equation or a linear plotting of those median prices. And the yellow exponential curve, or the parabolic trend, as Ben calls it, okay, same thing, comes up. And what this does is it allows him to take historical data, like all of these mean prices, and determine what the equation is, okay, because he's not given an equation, he's just given data, right? And so now with this data, he can identify what that linear equation is and what the parabolic equation is, and therefore project into the future what those linear trends and the parabolic trend are going to be. Does that make sense? Okay,
And
good.
but on that, his data, I have a question though, and
Sure.
I could just be reading this wrong, but he used actually rent and not sales, but he used the
Yes,
sales.
we're going to go to that next. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I believe he's using, well, let's just go down and let's find it. Let's see. I want to find exactly where he mentions that.
It's the paragraph above residential real estate fundamentals. Well, two paragraphs above that, actually, where he's talking about the formula. The
Let's see, as you can
pro-iteration.
see, yeah, I'm just going to read it real quick so that we can kind of find where it is. I've got it underlined here. But it says, as you can see, the blue line is not straight, but it's not a smooth upward sloping curve either. One of the skills I used quite a bit during my time in physics was determining which equation most accurately matched a given set of data. Okay, and this is called interpolation. Okay, and it's exactly the opposite of what we learned in high school, where we were given a formula and asked to graph it. Here, I got the graph and I needed to figure out the formula. That is what it represented in primitive form by the red line and yellow curve. And he gives the two examples. And then he says, I found the line you're looking for, but I'm going to finish up this part. He said, you can begin to see with this pro-iteration of interpolation the potential for how mathematical modeling can provide valuable insights about the future. Okay, that's where the curves go out beyond the historical data, right? Note that the actual linear trend I relied upon was a more complex function of market rent, as you were talking about, okay? As you'll see in the next chart, okay? So we're going to talk about that in just a second, but yeah, he's pointing out that that linear line was based on market rents as opposed to the actual median prices of the homes themselves.
And so that's how he determined his max loan to value, the max loan that he would provide.
That's right. He didn't use loan to value ratios,
right,
you know, based on historic or current or projected trends of house sales prices. He basically developed a correlation between rents and a conservative correlation between rents and how much he should be lending on a particular property based on the income. And so I think I just paraphrased what he said, but I'll read it again. He said, note that the actual linear trend I relied upon was a more complex function of market rent, as you'll see in the next chart. But the point here is that I used this process of data analysis, interpolation, and mathematical modeling to establish the maximum loan to value I was willing to lend through the ABL fund, okay? Which was admittedly conservative, and I'm glad it was, obviously, because he made over 40% return that what year, 2007, I think it was, 2008.
Right. I am curious, and it's not in the book. I would like to know what he was loaning at versus what other hard money lenders were loaning at.
In
Just
terms
out
of
of
loan to value, in other words, if you
Yeah.
converted his maximum to a LTV, what he was doing compared to others,
Yeah,
that would
I'm
be
kind
very
of
interesting.
curious.
I was
about
curious about that as well. I was definitely curious about that. In fact, here's the challenge. One of us, take this on as a challenge, is post that question in the community. So, you know,
He gets so sick of me.
oh, but these are great questions. These are the kind of questions he wants to get, right? And so, you know, basically say, okay, you're calculating this based on a function of market rents rather than a traditional LTV. But just out of curiosity, you know, during 2007, 2008, when you're basing your ABL on market rents, how much, if you were to convert that over to an LTV, how different was that LTV from the going rate back then? I believe the going rate was probably in this neighborhood as it is today, about 65, 70%. But you know, if he comes back and says, yeah, it translated into about a 50% LTV or a 60% LTV, and boy, are we glad we held those lines, because you're really only now looking at the projects that will be supported by, you know, good rents, as opposed to properties that are just based on what's bought and sold.
And this still like blows my mind.
Blow what?
It still blows my mind that he came up with this.
Oh yeah, this is fantastic. In fact, quite frankly, I'm looking at helping somebody with a fund, and they're not here, but helping somebody with a fund, and I'm thinking, gee, maybe we ought to rethink your underwriting guidelines to make sure that they incorporate exactly this rather than the traditional underwriting guidelines, because quite frankly, I'm convinced that we're probably going into another bubble. I think the bubble's going to burst if it hasn't burst already. I think we're going into another 2007, 2008, 2009 situation here that will make those years look calm by comparison. And so, you know, as he summarized this section, he said, if they had been using my methodologies back in 2008, there would have been no financial crisis. And so, you know, the point being is that if we, in setting up our funds and in doing what we do, follow those same procedures going into this next financial crisis, we'll thrive during this next financial crisis. But if we do what everybody else did back then, we'll go the same way as everybody else did back then. And so that's really the lesson to learn in the entire book, in the entire course, is get on board with the things that he's talking about doing so that we don't make the same mistakes. Any
So
thoughts?
I am curious how this translates from what he's doing in real estate to now the other asset classes that he's involved in. I mean, because it's kind of the same philosophy, if that's what you want to call it, or methodology, but it is probably very different.
Yeah.
And so he must have come up with some sort of thing, like, for example, with GP stakes or RIAs, that there must be some sort of mathematical formula that the ones that he's targeting have in order to make it work. He's proven it mathematically before he's actually done it.
I think a lot of that's going to come out in this section. We're right here in the core of his book in terms of what he's promoting. And so I think there are going to be some really good nuggets. This is one of the nuggets, okay? You know, here we're talking about, what is the concept that he's talking about here in trend identification? He's saying, you know, if you've got the history, go back and look at the history. If you don't have the history, then, you know, come up with data that's realistic, you know, back test it, and then apply your methodology here to this. Now, in this case, he's using rents as opposed to the actual prices. And here's the reason why. This is why he went there, Jody. Let me pull up this next slide right here. Oh, whoop.
Alternative assets
Oh.
are buried.
Okay, so what's wrong with this graph? Anybody?
Wait. Okay.
So these are the US house prices versus owner equivalent rent. And so what is this graph telling us? What kind of story can you tell by looking at these numbers in this graph? Anybody want to hazard a guess?
Well,
I mean,
it looks,
the house price is
Yeah, go
off the
ahead.
charts.
Okay.
well, right
And
around
in
that,
relation to
that 08 bubble though, right before the bubble
Yes.
is when you're seeing all that, all the
Yes.
houses go.
Yep, that's
the
exactly
charts.
right. You know, back here in the mid to late 80s, we had a little bubble, okay, where
Right.
housing prices got detached from rents. In other words, historically, what has been shown here is historically, house prices and rents have tracked very similarly, except in these periods here in the late 80s, there was a small bubble, and then starting in around 2000, they started detaching from rents again, and we had a big bubble, okay, that burst. And then here in 2013, 14, 15, it's starting to become detached again. And we're probably still in that
Oh,
bubble.
I want to see what it is now. That's what we
Yeah,
need to post on the community.
yeah, that's exactly right. We've got to somehow pull in the last 10 years worth of data to see where we're at, because we're in an even bigger bubble. And when that bursts, when you think about it, remember what happened in 2008, 9, 10, when this bubble happened? You know, what was going on Wall Street? What was too big to fail? Okay, because these detachments from the owner equivalent rent, you know, if that's our trend line that is reason and based on reason, and the markets now are going nuts. We had bank bailouts, we had bank failures, and we had to have the Fed bail them out. Okay, and it took years of quantitative easing and all kinds of things to try to, you know, stabilize the marketplace. Okay, so here's the hypothetical question based on that hypothetical upturn there in 2014, and that is can the Fed bail the banks out again? You know,
Sure.
could the taxpayers? I would hold to no, they can't. You're now going to be looking at a World Bank bailing out central banks.
Yeah. But still a bank bailing out a bank bailing
Oh
out a
yeah, that's
bank,
true.
right?
That's true. But what I'm saying is the economic collapse will be much more dramatic. It'll be bigger, and it will take longer to
We're gonna leave.
grow and heal past it. In other words, the band-aids that they put it on it last time won't work. And so if the band-aids won't work, now what's going to be too big to fail? And so that's the hypothetical question is have we reached a point where the bubble will take, you know, basically take the ship down as opposed to some central bank bailing everybody out and then passing that along to the taxpayer? And that was in the form of quantitative easing. You know, they did that through that. You know, and we're paying for it in terms of inflation now. You know, but you know, what are they going to do next time? Are we gonna turn into Zimbabwe? Well, where was it that had the $1 billion loaves of bread? I think that was Zimbabwe.
I'm scared of what they're gonna do, Mark.
Yeah. See, the American people have never experienced hyperinflation. You know, the biggest inflation we had was in the late 70s, you know, and it went out pretty fast and easy with Reagan because of how he used the IRAs to redirect money into the markets. But, you know, are we going to be able to do that again? You know, the problem comes, you know, problems come back. You know, there's this one down in the 80s and it was, you know, and now it's whoa, you know, and it's just going to go way off. And so, you know, yeah, the American people have never lived through a hyperinflationary situation. I remember, and I don't know, maybe I shared this story before, but I lived through a couple of years of hyperinflation in Argentina from 1979 to 1981. Some of you guys might not have even been alive then.
I wasn't.
But you know, it's interesting because they didn't put prices on products. They were repricing products literally several times a day. When I first went down there in 1979, just to put it in perspective, I could live like a king on $125 a month, believe it or not. I could live like a king. I mean, I could afford my apartment. I could afford 3 meals a day cooked for me. I could afford a lady to do my laundry once a week. I could take unlimited bus rides on the microbuses down there. I could take you know, I could do all kinds of things, you know, and so I could literally live like a you know, a very well established student, if you will, financially. Almost like a trust fund baby, you know, on $125 a month, mind you. Okay. 2 years later, I was living on $500 a month, $500 a month. So imagine that, 125 to 500. But the question was, what could I afford with that $500 a month? I could afford an apartment and 1 meal a day. That's it. And so because my parents were supporting me, I didn't ask for the $1,000 a month I probably would have needed to live like I did when I was living on 125. And so I only had them send me enough money to have a roof over my head and 1 meal a day. And, you know, I washed my own clothes, you know, my companion and partners, you know, we cut each other's hair. I looked really bad. And so
Those
you know,
have to be some great pictures.
oh yeah, it was. You know, I learned the difference between a bad haircut and a good haircut was about 2 weeks. And so the point is, you know, technically the cost of being down there and living the way I did when I started was more than 10 times in less than 2 years. Okay, and that was not even really hyperinflation compared to, you know, when I came back, Peru the next year I think had 30,000% inflation. I mean, we just don't have an idea of what this is going to do, and yet we could very well be on the brink of that. And so that's why, again, rents are probably going to be a better indicator of the value of property than prices, you know, in terms of historic prices or market comp prices of the property itself. So anyway, any other thoughts or questions on that?
Shit. Yeah. So with the rents, the average rent being, I believe it's $1,875 a month. What would you say the houses are worth then?
I don't know. I have not made the mathematical correlation between the average rents. Say, and you're talking about a single family home, probably?
I believe that's what the stat said when I saw it.
Yeah, and so he doesn't go into that in the book. And again, to Jody's earlier point, that's something else we'd probably like to see is what is that equation or thought process? And so you're asking exactly the question we all have is, how do you translate this rent line into a fair price for a home, and how much you'd be willing to purchase that home based on that rent line? So, and again, it goes back to, and then on top of that, Jody's question was, and what would that look like now compared to an LTV? If you took that rent analysis, that cost, or that value, I should say, and then compared that to an LTV, is it 50% LTV instead of 70? And the reason why is to help us understand that, and Ben makes the point that, the real estate market took an average hit across the board in 2008, 2009 of 28%, nearly 30%. And so that's the average. So that means there were some that were a lot lower, but some that were also a lot higher. And in those situations where the hit was higher, say higher than 30%, if you built your business on an LTV, an average LTV of 70%, that means that in those markets that went over 30%, they were now underwater on their houses. And so, I remember back in 2008, again, you guys, I don't know how old you are, if you remember that well, or if you're still, in high school, but the point is that I distinctly remember two phenomenon that I observed. Number one, in some markets, people just take their keys and hand them back to the bank. They didn't even bother with short sale. And if you remember, the short sale was something that kind of came out of that. It was a concept that would allow people to kind of just save their credit a little bit, or save their financial situation if they could help work with the bank to sell the house and get a short sale. They were doing that. Others weren't even bothering with the short sale. They just simply sent an envelope in with their loan statement and said, "Here's the keys, I'm done," and they moved out. And so, or waited until the bank kicked them out either. But that's what was happening. The other thing that I remember noticing was that as neighborhoods were affected by this, where Joe Blow on the street would put their house up for a short sale, and people would start to panic, and they would then put their house up, and of course with it, 2 or 3 houses coming up on the same street, now all of a sudden housing prices are dipping, the values are starting to dip down. It was almost like what am I thinking, chain reaction, effect, where the more houses came up, particularly houses that came up in a short sale situation, the lower the property values started going. And so that was those are two effects that you can probably relate to, personally, as you had family or friends that had short sales, or as you had your own house on the street, maybe you were okay, paying your mortgage and things like that, but other people were upside down, and voila, price values are now starting to drop. And that was creating that chain reaction kind of thing. So anyway, the point being that, I want to end on this section is, Ben is saying that if lenders had followed the same kinds of underwriting formulas that he had followed, using rents rather than LTVs, and a more conservative approach, and recognizing some of these trends, like the prices of the houses becoming disconnected from the rents, all of that combined, if they'd recognized that and followed the things that he was doing, there would have been no crisis of 2008. And that's quite a bold statement to make, but I also believe it, because like I said, I'm of the same house of economics that Ben is. And so,
And Mark,
huh?
I'm kind of seeing where he's going into that, because on page 83, he's starting to say people are looking at the market the same way.
Yeah.
And he says if you structure investment vehicles that are valued as a fixed discipline multiple of the income itself, as opposed to market cap rate.
Mm-hmm.
So he's using income multiple
Yes, he is.
as in part of his, whereas every other, like all the other investment firms and things like that are using cap rates, right?
Right. Mhm. That's
Wow.
exactly right. And so the challenge for us is to, dare I say it, prevail upon Ben to show us how those multiples of rents are used, what multiple of rent is it, and how they're used, then to compare to, or to make the determination of how much they're going to loan against a given property. And I think, this is good for single family homes, but I think it even factors in better for those who are playing in the multifamily residential area, because those are based on rents. And yet you have to buy them, you have to sell them, you have to build them, you have to fix them up, whatever the case may be. And they can become just as detached from rents as a single family home.
Oh, I think they have been.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And so, this is where, if I were to put out a series of questions, I would say, Ben, can you fill in a little more detail here? I think we understand the concept now. How about a little more detail? But that's a good point. In fact, I want to skip the rest of page 83 because Jody, you summarized it very, very well. I want to jump on to page 84 because this kind of reinforces what you were just reading on page 84, but it stood out to me so strongly that I double underlined it, and I want to probably ought to read it just word for word. It's the second two paragraphs on page 84. It says, and again, I like the way he personalized it at this point. It's not just a theory he's talking about. He's talking about, we did this, okay? And you'll pick up on that language, and I think that makes this even more powerful. He says, this can be achieved, as we did, by a de facto loan structure with a basis calculated as a fixed multiple of income, as opposed to some arbitrary LTV. And I think that's what you were reading earlier, Jody. It says further. Now, this is where it gets interesting because I don't know. I know what he's saying. What he's saying is very clear to me, but I don't know what the detail is behind it. And again, this to me is the secret sauce. I think he's revealing this as the secret sauce right here. He says, further, various derivatives can be employed, such as swaps and options, to extract the stability of the income and potential upside without substantial downside exposure. Okay, so let me see if I can repeat that in my own words. What he's saying is, in addition to making these loans, they also developed, shall I say it, structured product, okay, because that's a big term for him. But he used, and Jody, we were talking about this over the last few weeks, what does he do in the structured products to create other income opportunities? Well, here he's kind of given us a big, big hint. He's saying, further, various derivatives can be employed, such as swaps and options, to extract the stability of the income and extract the stability of the income and potential upside without substantial downside exposure. And so he's able to combine some of these kinds of instruments, perhaps with other things related in the marketplace, linked to real estate, maybe some REITs, some of the ETFs or something like that. And he's combining these things to be able to come up with derivatives or some kind of structured product financial instrument that allows people to invest in these, or allows the fund to invest in these, in addition to the straight up loans, and thereby protect or hedge their downside risk, if that makes sense. And so, as we're talking about, talking about making funds, and these funds are going to either purchase real estate or they're going to loan against real estate, like be a debt fund that loans against certain real estate projects. And then we sit down and go, okay, now what do we need to do to hedge against our downside risk here? And here he's talking about some other things. He goes on to say, to make matters even better, because the real estate market is an inefficient, unsophisticated private alternative asset class, and we get that. Especially on the small balance side, there are substantial holes that create tremendous arbitrage opportunities. There it is again. Okay, arbitrage opportunities in addition to these, or as a part of these derivatives that he mentions up above. So tremendous arbitrage opportunities that can be capitalized on by savvy asset managers, not only in terms of acquisition costs, but in terms of capital structure development and derivative pricing. And so right there in those two paragraphs, or that one paragraph, I guess it is, to me, next to risk adjusted performance measures, and the third party due diligence that Adagio offers, here is the essence of what they're doing with their structured products. That they're designing these products, and he can design them around a portfolio by combining these pieces and parts to come up with something that will now allow you to protect your downside risk. And so, yes, this is the genius of what Adagio does and what Ben is trying to teach us right here. This is the core. The whole thing pivots on those 2 points: risk-adjusted performance measures and derivatives that they can create, or structured product that they can create to hedge your risk. I could stop right there and say, there it is, guys. That's the whole course wrapped up in a paragraph.
So, yeah, that's on page 84, right, Mark?
Yes, it's at the top of, it's the first paragraph on page 84. And so my challenge to anybody coming back and listening to this after the fact, memorize that paragraph, bookmark it. Hey, dog ear the page, I don't know, but get that paragraph down to where you can understand conceptually what he's proposing here, so that we can, build funds that will have those two critical strategic components in it. And you can't go wrong at that point. It's been proven. And so,
right, because I think, what did he say at one time? It was like, and to not lose.
I'm sorry, you broke up there a little bit, Jody.
Oh, sorry, I'm now on the road. But I think in one of our conversations, he was saying that the objective of their investment strategy is to either win or win big, but not lose.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. In fact, I think he says it somewhere over here in slightly different words, but it's the same concept. But it was the concept of, win or, win big in the best case, and then win, in the worst case. But either way, you win.
Right.
Oh, here we go. It's the last part that we were going to cover on page 91. He said, the result was that if our counterparty performed, we won. If our counterparty didn't perform, we won bigger. And the profitability of these trades had no dependence upon the phase of the market cycle. In other words, we're not looking at what's going on outside of us. We're not looking at what's going on Wall Street. We're not looking at inflation. We're not looking at the marketplace. Everything is structured to win or win bigger, no matter what happens.
Right.
And that's the essence of the banking concept. The banks, I used to describe it as banks play a zero-sum game, which means, every dollar they win is great, but if you win $1, then they lose, and therefore they want that dollar too. Every dollar somebody wins that the bank doesn't, then that's a bank that a dollar the bank loses. That's how they perceive a zero-sum game. But I would modify that now to what Ben is saying. Basically, is we set things up as a bank so that if everything goes right, we win, and if everything goes wrong, we win bigger. And that's really how to really structure it or look at it.
Wow.
So
My
let me ask
my
this.
marketing brain is going crazy right now.
I can imagine. Go ahead, Anthony.
So in the AIP course that he offers, that teaches us how to actually put all this together into
Yes.
a product, right? So
Yes.
then and I believe he preaches for guys like me who are insurance licensed to go the investment club route. Is that
Mhm.
correct?
You know, he does talk about investment club as a good way to do it. But really, as I've been studying the different structures, you know, I think you can go just about any route that suits you best. My
Yeah.
point being is that the Reg D 506A. The Reg D 506A is the investment club. The Reg D 506B is a slightly different structure. Particularly in this case, you're able to allow a certain number of, just a second, they're being called to dinner and they're running right by me. So anyway, the Reg D 506B allows you to have non-accredited investors in it, a certain number, but they won't let you do general solicitation. So there's just different rules based on the goals and objectives you personally have in selecting the kind of structure you want to do. The Reg D 506C is you cannot admit non-accredited investors. They all have to be accredited, but now you can do general solicitation. And so it goes back almost, I'm just going to do a kind of a comparative statement, but it goes back to almost, do you want to set up a corporation? Do you want to set up an LLC? Do you want to set up a limited partnership? Do you want to set up a sole proprietorship, right? And it's all based on what do you want it to do for you? Because each of those different structures can do different things that are exclusive to other structures. Okay, so the same thing in a fund. Do you want to do a 5A? You know, there's certain rules that you got to follow, but you know, it's certainly easy to put together. An investment club is certainly an easy way to go.
Okay.
You know, the 5B is a little bit tougher. And the 5C is a little bit tougher still, but there are certain benefits that accrue to you out of each of those that would give you pause to look at it and say, okay, how do I want my fund to really work? And that will help you determine whether you do an A, a B, or a C.
Okay.
In
Then let me
this
ask
case.
this. So
And
when I'm structuring the fund product, I guess, I think he had mentioned that you can put in annuities inside the product.
Mhm.
Is because I'm licensed to sell annuities, so I'm just looking at it as create an investment club, you know, pull a bunch of money, and then not necessarily dump it all into annuities. But so like right now they're raising rates. I have an annuity right now that'll pay 4% guaranteed for 5 years.
Mhm.
So
So was
I
he
figured
saying
that
basically your investment club can create an annuity around the investments that are in it? And essentially you're selling an annuity as a way to get money into the club?
no. I was saying the money goes into the club, but the club invests in, well, annuity would be one of the things inside, you know, that they put their money into, along with maybe buying, you know, businesses or buying real estate.
Right,
But I
right,
feel
okay,
like
right, yeah.
the stable part and the guarantee part would be, you know, from the annuity itself, paying the fixed rate. Because I know
Right.
if they keep raising rates, we're going to have annuities that are going to pay more than 6% on a guaranteed
Yeah.
rate. So
That's where you
once,
might want to check with the Avara structured product that Adagio put together for Avara, because in that particular structured product, they guarantee what, a minimum of 8%, Jody, and yet it has the
yeah,
security of an annuity or treasury.
Yeah, and
So,
I think, Anthony, I think that Ben can, I think Mark and I are gonna, how we're looking at it is that, and I could, if I'm speaking out of turn, Mark, just tell me.
no, you're going
But
great. Keep going.
we're relying more on Ben's expertise as far as product development. And we're looking at it as quote unquote selling or offering products that he already has available.
Okay.
And so
And then,
that one product I was just mentioning is one of those.
right.
Okay, I'll follow now. So basically create the investment club and then invest in his products
Yes.
is
Right.
a way to do it as well. Okay, all right.
Yes,
But I
because
was just
all of his products have already been performance, risk adjusted, performance. All right,
But
so you don't
Anthony,
have to worry about doing that.
you and I should talk to him because I'm also in insurance. I have my Series 6, which
okay.
turns out I should have probably got my 65 because you can do more stuff with it.
Yeah,
But
I've been thinking about that too.
yeah, because I actually talked with Ben about, would he hold a Series 6? And he says, that's not really what I do. I do more Series 65 type stuff. He said, however, one of the things that he is considering is, have you heard of life insurance, the premium finance life insurance product?
Yeah, like
Kaizen.
Kaizen. Mhm.
Yeah, the premium finance. It's a little bit complicated, but I've heard about it. And I know that you got to go through a couple of different hoops, but basically the bank loans you a big portion of the money. Then you have a certain amount of time to pay the bank off, and then after the bank is paid off, whatever's left over is what yours is.
Mhm.
Yeah, so he's looking, well, he mentioned that is something that he would like to create or do. And so that would be like another product that I think we would, and how Mark and I are looking at it is that we're kind of relying on Ben and his expertise to kind of come up with these products. So then we are more his distribution channel. And I also think that's kind of how Ben is looking at it. I could be wrong, but that's kind of what I've gotten. Do you agree, Mark?
Oh, yes. I'm totally on board with what you're saying. Mhm.
Okay. I mean, I guess that would be easier than trying to come up with my own product, but I was just thinking, because he did mention annuities.
Yeah.
If I, created a fund, could I put the annuities that I personally sell inside the fund as something that they would purchase? That's all.
Yeah. So yeah,
Right.
the point I think here, and I was making it before just to kind of drive it home, is that if you come up with your own product or products, the number one thing that Ben is teaching is let him do third-party due diligence on that product, which would include creating a risk-adjusted performance measure for that product, okay, among other things. That's going to take time to do all that, and it's going to take money because he's going to get paid, right?
Right.
And so the question is if you were to just simply shortcut this whole thing and purchase Adagio products that have already been developed, already been risk adjusted, already been, all that due diligence has been done. And all you're doing as a part of your fund is just simply disclosing that due diligence rather than having to perform the due diligence. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah. No, I completely understand. Instead of doing it myself, he already has the products. All I really
Yeah.
need to
Why
create is the
reinvent a
investment
wheel?
fund.
Yeah,
Yeah,
why
okay.
reinvent a wheel when the
Okay.
wheel's already been?
Although Ben has been very clear that if you have a group of people and they need something specific, that
Mhm.
he could create products for sure.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah,
I just haven't run into that yet.
Yeah. That's what I was emphasizing back there on that page 84. That paragraph at the top of page 84, which is what he does. We were asking that question, Jody, a few weeks back. What does he do to create these structured products? Page 84.
Right.
So real quick, I just want to draw people's attention to the next few pages in which he discusses derivatives, and you use derivatives to control the risk-adjusted returns of any asset. So it's not just real estate, Jody, it's any asset, okay? And basically, the derivative is a contract that derives its value from the performance of an underlying asset, such as a real estate purchase, right? So he then goes in and talks about the kind of derivatives that we're talking about. You've got swaps, and he talks about swaps in real estate. And in this case, this is where, let's say, the owner of a piece of real estate that has an income stream, think of it as a business, so it has an income stream. He thinks that he can get a better return in the marketplace, by getting some kind of contract or instrument that lets him partake of the steady return of let's say, I don't know, cash equivalent. I know that's very low, but I'm just going to throw it out there. And the bank that underwrites the cash equivalent says, wait a minute, I'm going to gamble that the net revenue or the net income stream on the real estate is going to be higher than the interest rate I'm paying. And so they basically swap those and gamble. It's the same kind of gamble, I guess, as an insurance policy, where if I'm buying a life insurance policy, I'm gambling that I'm going to die and collect on that, and the life insurance company is gambling that I won't die and won't collect on. And so that kind of thing. And so those are derivatives. Swaps, that's an example of a swap. On page 86, we talk about future and forward contracts, and then there's an example of future or forward contracts on real estate. I realized that I had been doing futures and forward contracts in the past and didn't know what to call them. But now I know, because I read the transaction and I'm going, well, that's exactly what I was doing. So there's options, and options are really big and commonly used in the other products out there in the financial markets, stocks, bonds, things like that. And there's a detailed explanation in here of calls, puts, going long, going short. I don't know that I necessarily need to go into a lot of that, because most everybody probably understands those concepts. If not, this is a good treatment on it, and go back and read it. And that brings us, let's see, we talked about straddles as well. And then he comes in and on the page 90 and 91, he talks about options in real estate. And of course, we all know what those can look like. There's lease options. And so you literally have two contracts, a lease contract and an option contract. One of the things that I was looking at here, and I guess this is a shout out to Q, we were talking about recently market opportunities in real estate, and where is where's the pain point, or where is the unserved or underserved market. And here I'm looking at these options and going, oh my goodness, the small balance or under 50 million real estate market don't use options. And so Ben's saying, think about the opportunity that creates. It's a common practice for real estate owners to charge disproportionately small option fees for the right to buy their property at a given price, especially when a call is compared with a lease, which affords real estate investors the unique opportunity to recognize substantial upside potential while incurring very little risk. This disproportionate or asymmetric risk reward profile or positive convexity is the ultimate goal for professional investors. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, we want to put together a real estate fund. Why not put a real estate fund that basically makes money off of these options and other derivatives for that matter? And that then allows us to throw in the rest of the Adagio market mix, and it's all basically real estate. And so rather than going into the actual purchase of real estate or the actual lending against real estate, we get into these uniquely structured products in real estate. You can say, hey, I've got an alternative asset fund based on real estate that creates structured products around that, and it's a big win. And we have proof, because Adagio's been doing this for a long time.
Well, and you know, Mark, we were talking about that from an a
From a
small
marketing
business like
perspective.
M&A.
Yeah.
Well, the M&A lending as well, because there are
Yes.
lenders in that small.
That's true. That kind of lending space does fill an underserved niche, absolutely. That private equity space that is not served there. But then again, look at what we can do to hedge those risks. I mean, this is beautiful because we can create instruments that will hedge the risks for lending in that space as well. So,
Right, because it
good
would be
point.
based on multiples of income.
Yeah, yeah. Very good
Which-
point. Yeah. Because I think probably the most popular fund type besides real estate out there is probably private equity. And so
Right.
that's a great market. I mean, that's
And
a great idea.
it's so
to do it.
underserved.
Oh yeah, totally agree.
I wonder if Ben would let us be his asset managers.
Why do we have to ask? We just create the fund.
That's true. All we need to do is
That's,
find investors.
you know, the greatest, I think the greatest compliment that we can pay to Ben personally is to successfully establish a fund that allows us to do all the things that he talks about in his trainings. And
Right.
we rely on him to do the third-party due diligence and do the risk-adjusted performances, and create the derivatives and create the instruments, the structured product, I guess is what I'm trying to say, that would go with those to hedge our risk, and then be able to show that we're returning to our investors the kinds of returns that he has historically returned to investors. I think that would be the biggest compliment that we could pay him.
Right.
So anyway, I'm pretty much done for the night. Anybody have any other questions or comments, ideas?
So, you had mentioned the Avara structured product that he has.
Yes.
How do we find the products that he offers that are available through him?
That's a great question. We've got to get ourselves invited to the rollout meetings that he has with key investment bankers and key people in the community. Jody and I have been invited to attend some of those. We have that link somewhere, and so
Yeah,
we
I
can,
have the pitch deck for
yeah,
one
we
of
can,
them.
yeah, we can send you a link in the chat. It probably shouldn't be in the community because I don't want to inundate Ben or anybody with questions about these structured products that don't otherwise, that haven't paid the price to learn, right?
Right.
We're paying the price to learn. So I don't have a problem, forwarding that to you, let you look at it and you can come back and ask questions about it.
And Anthony, I think we may be required to go through Deltalk Capital for what
Yeah.
he has available right now.
What is your name again?
Deltalk Capital.
Yeah,
DL.
DAL.
Is Jeff doing the Avara structured product as well? Or is he just doing
Well,
the
it's
PPP?
all going through, my understanding is that it's all kind of, it's funneling through Jeff to Avara.
Okay, so he's basically aggregating funds for the minimums, because doesn't Avara require a minimum of $1 million?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's what's happening is Deltalk is out there aggregating funds. But quite frankly, we could still go through Deltalk, but if we aggregated, the minimum, we can go probably direct to Avara too. We just have to find out
Yeah.
which one he wants to do.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be a
Right,
problem
right.
for me to get the million because I see a lot of clients every week.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. So once you see how this is presented, Anthony, I think you'll get excited because essentially the essence of what it's doing is it's providing a return that is supposed to essentially outstrip inflation, while at the same time provide the security of an annuity or a treasury. So in other words, the biggest pain points for annuities and treasuries is I still lose money to inflation, you know, and for investments that are outstripping inflation, they're saying, but my money's at risk. I want the safety of the annuity or the treasury, you know, and so that's why they say annuities are never bought, they're always sold. You know,
Yeah.
here you have basically the equivalent, right? But it marries the best of the best. It marries the higher interest rate and it marries that with the safety and security of an annuity or a treasury. And so we're talking about, again, using derivatives to hedge their risk. And so, yeah, check it out. I don't know, Jody, are you good going ahead and just putting a link to that pitch deck in his chat box? If you don't have ready access to it, I can find it probably somewhere and send it over to him.
Yeah, I'm driving.
I don't mean right this very minute, but sometime in the next day or so.
Anthony, is your email on the community?
I don't think so. Hold on one second. Let me.
I can private message him in the community though, can't
That's what I mean, through the chat box. Yeah, just
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because I messaged Mark the other day.
yeah, in the chat box. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we should be able to just
So
pop that link in the chat box for him and he can go to town on it.
and Mark, is that the link that I sent you? Is that the annuity like product?
I believe it is. I started
Because it
watching
saw
that
the
this morning.
8%.
Yeah. It's 8%
like-
plus, I think, is the way they pitched it.
Right.
And so,
Okay.
you know, it's the goal when they first designed it was to basically outstrip inflation, is my understanding. I could be mistaken on that, but the idea was to give them a return that was higher than inflation, but at the same time offered the security or safety of an annuity or a treasury. How they do it, they don't go into detail, but that's essentially what they're representing it will do.
Well, and we kind of know now
Yep, we
a little
do.
bit of how they're doing it.
Yep, we do. We have
Now
some
we-
really big hints.
We do. And I honestly, Anthony, I like the co-GP and the LP products better. The returns are greater.
Mhm.
I think I have watched a co-GP video before, but I don't think he's still offering that anymore. That's been closed, right?
Officially, it's closed because Del Talk basically took up all of the positions, but Del Talk is selling co-GP positions. They're still raising money for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so the actual fund is closed, but if I wanted to get in on the co-GP part, it would have to go through Delta.
Correct.
Okay. And do you know what their restrictions are? What the requirements are?
Well, Del Talk has said that they'll go as low as $50,000 on that co-GP. However, here's the issue. If you go in with less than a full tranche, they will probably dictate to you what kind of return you will get. In other words, how much they will pay you for bringing that 50,000 to them. Jody and I are speculating, and that's what it is, speculation, that if we approach them with a full tranche, say the entire $13, $14 million, we would be in a position to negotiate a much better compensation structure than if we were going in with 50, 100, or even $1 million. If that makes sense. So
That's what we're trying to do, Anthony.
and that's what we're trying to do. We're basically going to approach the co-GP as though it's wide open and that we're going to fill an entire tranche and see what they do.
It's going to take a lot of marketing, but I don't think it'll be hard to do.
No, that's right. It's going to take some good marketing. But the beautiful thing about this is regardless of what fund you do, with these other types of structured products that Adagio has already come up with, as well as other structured products that they might come up with, you know, in terms of the derivatives like we've been talking, you'll be able to, you know, work some of that into the co-GP money or the limited partnership money that's associated with the co-GP. That's also a structured product. And that makes, you know, Ben quotes, I think, 30 20% plus. I think Jeff is trying to be conservative, and so he says 20% plus. But the whole idea is that that structured product is basically giving you hedge fund type returns.
Okay. So basically, I just need to focus on figuring out what kind of fund structure I want. And it's
Mhm.
basically a feeder fund into their products, right?
Or you put their products into your fund. But yeah, it's a feeder fund, and you're using the proceeds of that fund to purchase positions in Adagio's structured products, as well as products that you want to put in there, right? You've
Okay.
got deals that you want to put in there, great, put them in there and then go through the process of having them risk adjusted, and any other due diligence that Adagio thinks that you should perform on those types of products. So you're not limited to Adagio, because you got Adagio to help you with your due diligence, but you can certainly start with Adagio to start getting some good returns in there.
Now, is there anybody that would help with putting together, I guess, say the pitch deck or the presentation to, like my clients?
Mhm.
Is there somebody that could help do that?
Well, we've kind of taken an approach of helping each other, with the different things. We've got the launch formula that we've put out there, and that's probably one that I had to put on YouTube for the community. But essentially, the launch formula is designed to show you what order to put your different dominoes in, and then knock them down. But where you feel you're weak and that you could use some help, that's where you go to the community and say, hey, I need somebody to help me with a pitch deck. I need somebody to help me with my legal documents, or I need somebody to help me with this. And that's
Yeah,
where
we're working on that right now.
Yep, we are working on that right now. But we probably need a bigger group, because right now there's just about 4 or 5 of us. And, I'm working on 2.5 other projects, and, for me to start, I know Jody's working on a couple, and, other people are working on some. And so we need more people who are willing to roll up their sleeves and say, okay, Anthony, I'm willing to come in, and I'll be your partner on this. You want to be willing to bring people in as partners and let them grunt with you for, an equity stake in your project. And so, they might be the marketing person. They might be the fund manager who deals with all of the administrative and legal details and the accounting details, or they might be somebody who can scout out some great deals for you. Just depends on how you want to work with different people based on what you do well and versus what they do well, and how well you resonate, right? It's like literally starting a company, and you're going to bring 2 or 3 people together with you and form this. And the idea of forming it out of the community is to be able to put people to work within the community who've joined this, who've taken the courses, studied the material, know a little bit about what's going on. And so presumably they'd be able to add a lot of value for you. Are you limited to working just within the community? No, you can work with anybody you want. But but I think finding people from within the community is a really good way to get some synergy going. And in that way, you can get your fund going and get it up and going fairly quickly.
And Anthony, I'm willing to help with, it's me and Mark working on mine. So
Okay. Yeah, I think I just sent you a message, so you can send me the link to the Avara. I think I did watch that one.
Okay.
But I may have lost the link to it. But I think you was on there too, weren't you, Mark?
I probably was.
And then there was another guy that he had brought on with him. So
Okay.
I believe there's 3 of you guys on there. He was a little bit younger though.
Yeah, Toby probably. Toby's been working with us on some things.
Maybe. I think he said he came from some other hedge fund and he was doing it for them and decided he wanted to do it for himself.
Right.
oh, Jeff.
Yeah. Oh, Jeff. Okay. Yeah. Yep.
That's Jeff.
So, that's the way I think we ought to do it. I would volunteer to jump right in as well. It's just that I'm noticing that my plate feels kind of full with everything I'm working on right now. I'm more than happy to be a resource to you, as far as answering questions, especially in these meetings. Shoot me a question in the community and I can always shoot an answer back. But feel free to go out and bring some more people into this inner circle and make some of them part of your inner circle. And that way you guys can put the fun together that you want to do.
Okay.
And if you ever decide you want a board of advisors, maybe that's where I could fit on it, is on that board of advisors, because I'm really good at pontificating.
Okay. Okay. But yeah, like I said, all this is new to me. But I do want to create products for my clients that are better than the insurance products that I have access to now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they stink. Insurance products stink.
That's why I say annuities are sold, not bought.
We do make a lot of big commissions on them. So yeah, for sure.
Exactly. Well, guys, I'm gonna call it a night. Let's wrap this up and let you guys get to
Thank you,
your
Mark.
dinners, and I'll get this posted just as soon as Zoom tells me it's ready.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Mark.
All right. Have a good night.
Thanks, Anthony.
We'll see
All
you.
right. Thank you.
Bye.
I sent you a message.